Hey Clubhouse, Miss Erin here. So we are going to continue reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 12, The Mirror of Erised. Christmas was coming. One morning in mid-December, Hogwarts woke to find itself covered in several feet of snow. The lake was frozen solid, and the Weasley twins were punished for bewitching several snowballs so that they followed Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. The few owls that managed to battle their way through the stormy sky to deliver post had to be nursed back to health by Hagrid before he could fly off again. No one could wait for the holidays to start. While the Gryffindor common room and the Great Hall had roaring fires, the drafty corridors had become icy, and bitter wind rattled the windows in the classroom. Worst of all, Professor Snape's class down in the dungeons, where their breath rose in a mist before them, and they kept as close as possible to their hot cauldrons. "I do feel so sorry," said Draco in one potions class, "for all those people who have to stay at Hogwarts for Christmas break, because they're not wanted at home." He was looking over at Harry as they spoke. Crabbe and Goyle chuckled. Harry, who was measuring out powdered spine of lionfish, ignored them. Malfoy, who had been much more unpleasant than usual ever since the Quidditch match. Disgusted that Slytherin had lost, he had tried to get everyone laughing at how wide-mouthed Tree Frog would be replacing Harry as Seeker next. Then he realized that nobody found this funny, because they were all so impressed at the way Harry had managed to stay on his bucking broomstick. So Malfoy, jealous and angry, had gone back to taunting Harry about having no proper family. It was true Harry wasn't going back to Privet Drive for Christmas. Professor McGonagall had come around the week before, making a list of students who would be staying for the holidays, and Harry had signed up at once. He didn't feel sorry for himself at all. This would probably be the best Christmas he'd ever had. Ron and his brothers were staying too, because Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were going to Romania to visit Charlie. When they left the dungeons at the end of potions, they found a large fir tree blocking the corridor ahead. Two enormous feet sticking out of the bottom, and a loud puffing sound told them that Hagrid was behind it. "Hi, Hagrid. Do you want any help?" Ron asked, sticking his head through the branches. And here's a nice portrait of Ron. "Nah, I'm all right, thanks, Ron." "Would you mind moving out of the way?" came Malfoy's cold drawl from behind them. "Are you trying to earn some extra money, Weasley? Hoping to be gamekeeper yourself when you leave Hogwarts? I suppose that hut of Hagrid must seem like a palace compared to what your family's used to." Ron dived at Malfoy just as Snape came up the stairs. "Weasley!" Ron let go of the front of Malfoy's robes. "He was provoked, Professor Snape," said Hagrid, sticking his huge hairy face from behind the tree. "Malfoy was insulting his family." "Be that as it may, fighting is against Hogwarts rules, Hagrid," said Snape silkily. 5 points from Gryffindor, Weasley, and be grateful it isn't more. Move along, all of you." Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle pushed roughly past the tree, scattering needles everywhere and smirking. "I'll get him," said Ron, grinding his teeth at Malfoy's back. "One of these days, I'll get him. I hate them both, Malfoy and Snape," said Harry. "Come on, cheer up. It's nearly Christmas," said Hagrid. "Tell you what, come with me and see the Great Hall. Looks a treat." So Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed Hagrid and his tree off to the Great Hall. Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were busy with Christmas decorations. Hagrid, the last tree, put into the far corner, would you?" The hall looked spectacular. Festoons of holly and mistletoe hung all around the walls, and no fewer than 12 towering Christmas trees stood around the room, some sparkling with tiny icicles, some glittering with hundreds of candles. "How many days do you got left until your holidays?" Hagrid asked. "Just one," said Hermione. "And that reminds me, Harry, Ron, we've got half an hour before lunch. We should be going to the library." "Oh yeah, you're right," said Ron, tearing his eyes away from Professor Flitwick, who had golden bubbles blossoming out of his wand, and trailing them over to the branches of the new tree. "The library?" said Hagrid, following them. "Just before holidays? Bit keen, are ya?" "Oh, we're not working," Harry told him brightly. "Ever since you mentioned Nicholas Flamel, we've been trying to figure out who he is." "You what?" Hagrid looked shocked. "Listen here. I told you, you need to drop it. It's nothing to you with that dog's garden." We just want to know who Nicholas Flamel is, that's all, said Hermione. Unless you would tell us and save us the trouble, Harry added. We must have been through hundreds of books already, and we can't find him anywhere. Just give us a hint. I know I've read his name somewhere. I'm not saying nothing, said Hagrid flatly. Just have to find out for ourselves then, said Ron, and they left Hagrid looking disgruntled and hurried off to the library. They indeed had been searching books for Flamel's name ever since Hagrid let it slip, because how else were they going to find out what Snape was trying to steal? The trouble was, it was very hard to know where to begin, not knowing what Flamel might have done to himself into a book. He wasn't in Wizards of the Great Wizards of the 20th century, or notable magical names of our time. He was missing, too, from important modern magical discoveries and a study of recent developments in wizardry. And then, of course, there was the sheer size of the library. Tens of thousands of books, thousands of shelves, hundreds of narrow rows. Hermione took out a list of subjects and titles she had decided to search, while Ron strode off down a row of books and started pulling them off the shelves at random. Harry wandered over to the restricted section. He had been wondering for a while if Flamel wasn't somewhere in there. Unfortunately, you need a specially signed note from one of the teachers to look at any of the restricted books, and he knew he never would get one. These were books containing powerful dark magic never taught at Hogwarts and only read by older students studying advanced against the dark arts. What are you looking for, boy? Nothing. Madam Prince was the librarian, brandished a feather duster. You better get out of here then. Go on. Out. Wishing he'd be a bit quicker at thinking up some story, Harry left the library. He, Ron, and Hermione had already agreed they better not ask Madam Pince where they could find Flamel. They were sure she'd be able to tell them, but they couldn't risk Snape hearing what they were looking for. Harry waited outside the corridor to see if the other two had found anything, but he wasn't very hopeful. They had been looking for a fortnight, after all, but as they only had odd moments between lessons, it wasn't surprising they'd found nothing. What they really needed was a nice long search without Madam Pince breathing down their necks. 5 minutes later, Ron and Hermione joined him, shaking their heads. They went off to lunch. You will keep looking while I'm away, won't you? Said Hermione. And send an owl if you find anything. And you could ask your parents if they know who Flamel is. It'd be safe to ask them. Yes, very safe. They're both dentists, said Hermione. All right, we will stop there and continue for the next part.